However, things weren't as easy as Lamb had hoped. A scream signaled the goblin's return. Without hesitation, he ordered 𝗧𝗆𝗆 to hide, and she obeyed immediately. The first goblin appeared, charging wildly at Lamb, screaming that humans had appeared. It wanted to eat the girl to become stronger, knowing it wouldn't be killed then. The goblin frantically looked for 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆. Its haste made it an easy target for Lamb, who quickly killed it. Lamb informed 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆 that humans were here to save her. 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆's face lit up with joy, assuming it was a knight. She said she would go out to check. Lamb looked at her with concern. The appearance of a knight meant 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆 would be saved, and perhaps he could prove his worth, but his excitement was stifled when he saw the knight easily killing other goblins. The knight wasn't putting in much effort to deal with the goblins, venting his anger about his clothes being ripped. Seeing the human stats, Lamb was incredibly surprised. His name was 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗶𝗴𝗵𝗁, level 25, with strength 30 and defense 50. Equipped with platinum armor and an iron sword, his total power was 400, the highest stat Lamb had seen since coming to this world, making him question if 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗀 was human. As Lamb stood amazed at how easily the human dealt with the goblins, 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆 approached 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗆 excitedly. However, Lamb quickly noticed 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗆 raising his sword to attack 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆. With quick reflexes, he pushed her away just in time. Despite saving 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆 from death, the sudden attack baffled Lamb. Holy knights were supposed to save people. He assumed 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗆 had mistaken the girl for a goblin in the dark cave, but that wasn't the case. 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗆 angrily expressed disdain for a goblin having dodged his attack. 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 tried to explain she was human, but 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗆 told her to be silent. He believed she had been defiled by the goblins and might be pregnant with their child. It was laughable to him that someone as filthy as her would expect mercy. 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 begged, insisting she hadn't been defiled, and pointed to Lamb as her protector. Unfortunately, 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗆 didn't believe her. The idea that a goblin saved her was unbelievable. He raised his sword to end her. Lamb couldn't believe what he was seeing. He didn't expect things to end so quickly. With no other choice, Lamb stepped forward, pushing 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 aside and facing 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗆. He hoped there would be enough time for 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆 to escape. Lamb grabbed his crude weapon and lunged at 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗆, willing to sacrifice himself to protect the girl. Before the collision, an aura enveloped Lamb, leaving both him and 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗆 astonished. The magic came from a woman dressed in white, exuding holiness. She demanded 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗀𝗆 stop, feeling the goblin was strange. She was 𝗖cie𝗽𝗆𝗆𝗆, the saint of the divine temple. Seizing the opportunity, 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 crawled over and begged 𝗧𝗏 to save them. 𝗏𝗏 helped 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆 to her feet and presented her to 𝗧𝗏𝗀𝗏. Then she turned to Lamb and asked if he could understand her. Lamb, trapped in the barrier, quickly responded he could. He took a deep breath, explaining he wasn't a monster of this world but used to be human, changed due to an accident. He begged 𝗏𝗏 to take him along. While 𝗧𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗏 thought the goblin was just smarter than others, 𝗍𝗏 smiled. Goblins usually can't think or speak fluently, but this one could. She decided to take him to the temple for study. 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 was happy, feeling she fulfilled her promise to the goblin. 𝗏𝗏 then asked Lamb if he was willing to go with them. Lamb happily agreed. Finally, things seemed to be getting better for him. With a snap of her fingers, 𝗍𝗏 broke the barrier imprisoning Lamb and ordered everyone to prepare to leave. Lamb felt safe and grateful. He approached 𝗏𝗏 to express his gratitude, promising to repay her. But as he looked closer at her face, he noticed a cruel smile. The next thing he heard was the sound of metal piercing flesh. He turned back in fear, seeing 𝗧𝗆𝗆𝗆𝗆 killed. Her lifeless body lay on the cold ground. Lamb was stunned, unable to move. The shock was too great. Just as he thought things were improving, it turned out to be a cruel lie. The voice of the woman he thought was his savior rang out with cruel laughter. She mocked his naivety, saying his willing following was the best repayment. Lamb understood the cruel reality of this world. A week passed in the village. The bell tolled, summoning everyone to the town square. 𝗧𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏 addressed the villagers, announcing a devastating goblin attack on Bright Town. This incited fury among the villagers, who demanded blood for blood. Seeing humans and goblins as sworn enemies was exactly the reaction 𝗧𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏 hoped for. After whipping up their hatred, 𝗧ှ praised the temple. The knights, he explained, had avenged the villagers on the temple's behalf. The holy maiden 𝗖cie then stepped forward, creating a dazzling spectacle with her powers. She urged the villagers to continue praying to the temple, assuring them it would always protect its faithful. Her words instantly swayed the villagers. Even those previously skeptical were now devoted to the temple. Later, 𝗖cie returned to her chambers, basking in the success of her speech. She found the villagers gullible, praying harder and worshipping the temple more fervently. Her smug satisfaction was interrupted by a voice calling her name. It was the goblin lamb. He had regained consciousness, covered in horrifying scars and missing an eye. Despite his injuries, a burning rage was in his eye. 𝗖cie ignored his words, a twisted smile on her lips. She was amazed by his tenacious spirit. It's been a long time since she'd seen such tenacious life, perhaps. This is why the temple hasn't been able to eradicate all goblins from the continent. Lamb's return to consciousness excites 𝗖cie. She can continue her experiments, observing how the poison affects him. Lamb, enraged, repeats his accusations. You tricked me. You killed 𝗧𝗴𝘀𝗆. Is this the true face of your temple? This so-called justice humans boast about his fury is met with 𝗖fra's cruel indifference. She silences him with a sharp thrust of a staff against his mouth, laughing mockingly. How dare a weak, filthy creature like you, a degenerate goblin, speak of human justice? She claims 𝗧𝗴𝘀 was under a spell and dared to speak for him. A betrayal, therefore death was her final act of loyalty. Goblins are nothing more than insects. It's a great honor that the Holy Maiden even speaks to you. Be grateful and use your wretched little body to serve mankind in the temple's experiments. The brutal torture continues. Lamb, helpless, resists the endless unbearable pain. Even when he falls unconscious, he's quickly awakened by the torment. He wonders if he'll die here. He doesn't want to, but he can't blame anyone but himself. He was so foolish, reborn as a lowly goblin, naively believing in humans' kindness. His weakness and naivety led to 𝗧𝗴𝘀𝗆's death. After he was captured by the villagers, 𝗧ှ and 𝗖fra tortured and tormented him with every imaginable cruelty. They never believed his word, taking sick pleasure in his suffering. Lamb's suffering eventually comes to an end. He's tortured to death by the cruel woman. His only wish in his final moments, if he had another chance, was to never trust humans again. If he could do it again, he'd crush their bones and drink their blood. But that was only if he could be reborn. As his consciousness fades, instead of drifting into an endless void, Lamb awakens in a different space, a place filled with brilliant white light and twinkling stars. His body is fully healed. Before he can ask where he is, a system window appears. It informs him that the Goblin Life simulation system has been activated and he has died. A brief summary of his life flashes before him. Due to your naivety, you forgot you were a goblin. Humans will never trust goblins. You died from torture and abuse. This pain will be engraved in your mind and you will never forget. As a result, you are the most tragic character in the rebirth system. Do you want to start again? Yes or no? Lamb is startled. His system only activated when he died, and this system might allow him to be reborn. But will he be reborn as a low-level goblin? The system reminds him if he chooses no, his soul will completely dissipate. If he chooses yes, he will be reborn into a goblin body 1 week earlier. This made him incredibly excited. A week ago was his chance for revenge. He had to get revenge on 𝗧ှ and 𝗖fra. Of course, he chose to be reborn again. A white light enveloped his body, signaling the start of his Goblin Zero life. Lamb's eyes were now filled with rage. This rebirth was slightly different because he was now in his Goblin Zero life. To help him live longer, the system gave him more power. Feeling his strength, Lamb smiled with satisfaction. Even if it was just a little, coming back to life was the most important thing. But it seemed this was his only chance because the system immediately warned him of danger. People from the temple were coming. If he died again, he wouldn't be reborn. This shocked him, but he didn't expect more. Being reborn once was already a miracle. He wasn't strong enough to fight the temple yet, so he immediately asked the system what he could do. The system explained that it was called the Goblin Life Simulation System. It could simulate his life and predict future events. Each different choice would lead to different outcomes. Each simulation required 24 hours to complete. After the simulation, he would earn points from each simulation, which he could use to exchange for items in the system. This made Lamp chuckle. This simulation method meant he could see the future, so he immediately started using the simulation. The system reminder displayed the current situation: escape the Goblin Cave. To escape, he had to make choices: 1. Warn his goblin friends and unite to face the humans. Reward 10 points. 2. Abandon the other goblins and escape on his own. Reward 5 points. 3. Hide in the cave and pray the temple people don't find him. Reward 0 points. Lamp thought about it. Even though there were 3 options, he was sure that even if all the goblins in the cave united, they couldn't defeat 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗵𝗁. The battle would end with their deaths and he wouldn't be able to escape. But he still chose to simulate the first option. He hoped that with the points he earned, he could exchange for a weapon from the shop and kill 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗵𝗁 with a sneak attack. As predicted, after the simulation, all the goblins were killed. The result was a complete failure. The system asked him to think carefully when making decisions and also gave him 10 points. Lamp was happy to get the points, even though his plan failed. He quickly opened the system's shop. Many weapons appeared immediately. But the problem was that his points were too low. The only thing he could exchange for was a short knife. It increased his movement speed by 10% and his strength by 15 points. He grabbed the knife. Those stats were immediately added to his information panel. At this point, Lamp remembered 𝗧𝗆𝗆. He asked why he didn't see her. The system informed him that due to his rebirth, some events had changed. 𝗧𝗆𝗆 wasn't captured by the goblins. She was living happily with her family in the village. Knowing this made Lamp very happy. A smile appeared on his face. He felt he had fulfilled his promise to bring her home. Now he had no worries on his path to revenge. The thing to do now was to escape and survive. He chose a narrow exit to go out. This place was small, so there would definitely be fewer guards. There were only 2 guards outside. They were discussing their work. These goblins were very weak, so they could be easily defeated. Lamp heard their conversation. He carefully advanced to the entrance of the cave. The 2 guards talked about how any goblin that ran out would be easy to kill. 𝗧𝗴𝗀𝗵𝗁 had asked them to kill any goblin who ran out and not let them return to the village. This conversation confirmed Lamp's belief that everyone in the temple was a bunch of bastards willing to kill their own people. Therefore, a goblin like him had no reason to be merciful to them. Lamp pinched his nose, trying his best to imitate a woman's voice of distress, and pleaded for help. The guards immediately paid attention to it, wanting to kill the girl. One of them entered the cave with a knife behind his back. He told the girl not to be afraid, that he was a temple man and was here to take everyone home. But instead of a woman, it was Lamp with a sharp knife pointed at the exit. The knight noticed the strange behavior of his comrade and decided to check on him. As he approached, he was shocked to see a goblin standing there. In a flash, Lamp threw the knight's body away and charged toward the terrified knight. At incredible speed, his agility allowed him to easily wound the knight, who fell to the ground in pain. Overcome with fear, the knight screamed, "You can speak human!" Lamp's sharp steel blade was the only answer to the knight's fear. Knowing he was no match for Lamp's power, the knight realized he was facing death. In desperation, he begged for mercy, kneeling and pleading for compassion. He showed Lamp a picture of his family, hoping for a chance to return to them. He praised Lamp's intelligence, claiming he would understand. That he was merely following the orders of the temple. He insisted that he was forced into doing what he did. The knight offered Lamp a bag of gold and a beautiful woman, promising to select the most alluring one for him. However, for a man like Lamp who had been betrayed, these words only fueled his anger. The knight's true nature was exposed. He had planned to use Lamp's hesitation to kill him, but it was all part of Lamp's plan. He swiftly and coldly ended the knight's life. Lamp felt pity for the man's family, but understood that sometimes ruthlessness was necessary. Evil needed to be eradicated, especially now that he was no longer human. His attention was drawn to a voice coming from the forest. It was lower and his men heading towards them.